A journalist asked a simple question, and the senator's reaction was anything but simple. The deeper she dug, the more dangerous the truth became. The late afternoon sun slanted through the tall windows of the state press room, painting the buzzing space in amber light. Reporters shuffled papers, camera shutters clicked, and the hum of anticipation drifted like static in the air. In the second row sat Mara Ellis, her posture straight, her expression calm, yet her eyes carried the sharpness of someone who had spent years carving truth out of evasive answers. The warm glow caught the edges of her curls and the smooth leather of the notebook resting on her lap. Its corners were frayed, its spine softened with use, and embossed on the cover were faint initials, M.E.D.C. Across the room, Senator Dalton Reeves stepped onto the podium with the confidence of a man who believed every inch of the room belonged to him. His gaze swept quickly over the crowd and skimmed right past Mara, as it had countless times before attention tightened the air, invisible but unmistakable. Everyone knew Reeves chose his questions carefully, preferring the soft tosses of friendly reporters over the precision strike inquiries Mara was known for. Still, Mara lifted her pen, steady and patient, as if she already knew this moment was merely the beginning of something larger, something she had quietly been preparing for, page by page in that worn notebook. Senator Reeves launched into his talking points with rehearsed certainty, his voice echoing off the press room walls. When questions opened, Mara lifted her hand immediately, straight spine, composed breath, pen balanced between her fingers. Reeves's gaze swept the crowd again, slower this time, deliberate. He paused at her raised hand, then slid his attention to a reporter 2 rows behind her. "Go ahead, Jason," he said, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Mara lowered her hand, her expression unchanged, but a subtle heat tightened beneath her ribs. Jason fumbled through an unfocused question, flipping frantically through his notes. Reeves answered with exaggerated patience, throwing a quick glance toward Mara, as if enjoying the performance. When the next opportunity came, Mara raised her hand again, higher this time. Reeves didn't even pretend to consider her. "Yes, Kelly," he called to a newcomer, whose voice shook as she read from her screen. As Mara began to speak anyway, offering her question over Kelly's fading words, Reeves cut her off with a curt, "We're moving on." In the corner of Mara's eye, a young staffer stiffened. He leaned toward a colleague and whispered something urgent, his face pale, his hands trembling slightly. An unmistakable sign that Reeves's avoidance wasn't simple arrogance. Something deeper, more dangerous, was being protected. Mara left the press room with a calm stride, but inside her thoughts churned like a storm tightening its spiral. Reeves's pointed dismissal wasn't just arrogance. She felt it, a weight pressing against her instincts. She had learned long ago to trust that pressure. It meant there was a story waiting to be unearthed. That night, under the dim glow of her desk lamp, Mara flipped open her worn notebook. One name led to another, one contract to a shadowed payment, until a pattern surfaced, ugly, deliberate, and carefully concealed. Reeves had quietly funneled state funds into a private contractor owned by a longtime political ally, money intended for minority neighborhoods. New parks, repaired housing, after-school programs had vanished into the pockets of men who shook hands in back rooms and smiled for cameras during election season. The deeper Mara looked, the stranger the landscape became. Public documents she had seen just weeks earlier were suddenly missing from state databases. A city clerk who had once been eager to talk now hung up as soon as she introduced herself. Even a trusted source sent her a cryptic message. "I can't be involved. Don't contact me." Then came the anonymous email. No greeting, no name, just 3 chilling words glowing on her screen. "Stop. Digging. Now." And for the first time in years, Mara felt the faint whisper of danger curling around the truth she was chasing. Mara submitted the article with steady hands, though her editor's office buzzed with unease. He paced, rubbing his temples, warning her of the political storm she was inviting. "Reeves has friends everywhere," he muttered. "He can bury careers. But Mara only nodded, eyes sharp with resolve. "Let him try," she said quietly. "The truth deserves daylight." By sunrise, the article was live. The backlash hit instantly, and so did the praise. Community activists shared her report with fierce gratitude. Mothers from the neglected neighborhoods wrote messages thanking her for speaking what they had suspected for years, and local leaders demanded an immediate investigation. The newsroom phones rang nonstop, each call adding fuel to a growing fire that Reeves could no longer ignore. That afternoon, the senator held a hastily arranged press conference. His face was tight, his smile brittle. "This report," he began, voice loud and defensive, "is sensational fiction. I've never authorized a transfer of funds to Milford Development Group, nor have I been involved in any decision about their East Side operations." Mara watched from the crowd, her breath catching. He had just revealed two details never mentioned in her article: the contractor's name and the specific neighborhood where the money had originally been destined. Only someone entangled in the scheme would know both. And in that slip, Mara felt the story crack open even wider. Days after Mara's article ignited the state, the first crack in Senator Reeves's armor widened. A second whistleblower, this time a city budget analyst, came forward, trembling but resolute. "Your report gave me courage," she told Mara in a quiet voicemail. Attached were spreadsheets, emails, and internal memos that mapped the corruption with brutal clarity. From that moment, the downfall accelerated. News outlets picked up the story nationwide. Reeves's allies, once loud in their loyalty, retreated into silence. His own party released a lukewarm statement about ethical concerns that everyone recognized as the beginning of abandonment. Soon, the State Ethics Committee announced a formal investigation, and Reeves was forced into the one place he had spent weeks avoiding: the witness table. The televised hearing drew millions. Mara watched from the press section as the junior staffer, the same young man who had whispered nervously during the briefing, took his seat. His voice shook at first, but steadied as he described falsified reports, redirected funds, and instructions he claimed came directly from Senator Reeves. Reeves's composure shattered. Sweat gathered at his collar, his jaw clenched with each damning statement. By the end of the day, the committee chair announced a recommendation for criminal review. The next morning, under a gray, unwelcoming sky, Reeves stood before cameras and resigned, his voice hollow, his legacy collapsing around him like dust. Months passed, and the storm that had once shaken the state now settled into a new, quieter rhythm. On a late afternoon, softened by golden light, dust motes drifted in the Capitol rotunda like tiny sparks suspended in air. Footsteps echoed across the marble floor, measured, confident, familiar. Mara Ellis walked through the Civic Hall, not with a recorder or press badge, but in a crisp navy suit that caught the amber glow like polished steel. Staffers paused as she passed, whispering her name with a mix of admiration and disbelief. On a nearby desk lay a neat stack of official documents, waiting only for her signature. She picked up the pen, its weight steady in her hand, and signed without hesitation. This was no press visit. This was her first day in office. The seat Reeves had abandoned in disgrace was now hers, won through a campaign that grew from the very communities he had neglected. They had rallied behind her not just as a journalist, but as a fighter who had proven she would stand when others hid. As Mara stepped toward the chamber doors, a reporter raised a hand. "Madam Representative," he called, voice steady, "what will you tackle first?" Mara paused, turning with a calm, confident smile, the same one she once hid behind in crowded press rooms. "I never ignore a voice that seeks the truth," she said, and the rotunda seemed to glow a little brighter. In the weeks after Mara took her oath of office, her story echoed far beyond the marble halls of the Capitol. Teachers discussed it in classrooms, mothers repeated it to their children, and young journalists pinned her photo above their desks as a reminder of what conviction could accomplish. Her journey, from being ignored in a crowded press room to standing at the center of state power, became a living testament to what happens when a single voice refuses to be silenced. Mara understood the weight of that truth. She felt it each time she passed the rotunda, remembering the sting of Reeves' dismissive smirk and the quiet determination that kept her standing even when doors were slammed in her face. She had risen, not because she sought revenge, but because she believed deeply in something larger than herself, the idea that justice begins when someone is brave enough to challenge the comfortable lies others protect. Meanwhile, Reeves's downfall became its own cautionary tale. His arrogance had blinded him, convincing him that ignoring one woman could erase her. Instead, it amplified her. His dismissal, meant to diminish her, had lit the very fire that exposed his corruption. And so the lesson settled, clear and unwavering. Courage invites justice, integrity outlasts power, and those who rise from disrespect often rise the highest, because they learned early that their worth was never defined by someone else's refusal to see it.